Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for the final session in our All Hands on Deck leadership series, The New Innovators. I'm Maria Wynne, Chief Executive Officer of Leadership Greater Chicago, and it is my pleasure to welcome you. For those of you accessing captioning for today's program, please click on the closed captioning icon at the bottom of your screen. The instructions are also provided in the chat. Since October, we have been on a journey of emergence together. Throughout this series, we've heard from a tremendous group of civic leaders whose work focuses on our region's ability to equitably and inclusively emerge from the pandemic, closing the socioeconomic gaps that have become even more apparent over the past 2 years. We appreciate your participation. We thank you for your commitment to the learning and listening process and to the work required of all of us to ensure the equitable progress in our city and our region continues. As always, we offer a big thank you to WBEZ, to Matt Moog, Chief Executive Officer and a Daniel Burnham Fellow, and Tracy Brown, Chief Content Officer, for their continued partnership in bringing this series to our community of fellows and partner participants. We also extend tremendous gratitude for our 14 partners who have generously supported this year's series. These organizations have demonstrated their commitment to the rebuilding of a brighter, more equitable Chicago by collectively bringing more than 150 of their leaders into these important conversations. We are grateful for their participation, so please join me in thanking Allstate, Aon, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois and Healthcare Service Corporation, BMO Harris Bank, ComEd, Federal Home Loan Bank of Chicago, First Midwest Bank, John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, JP Morgan Chase, Nicor Gas, Northern Trust, PwC, Slalom, and William Blair. We're glad to have you all with us. So now for today. Now in its second year, The New Innovators is a showcase of change makers and problem solvers who are putting civic leadership into action. Through their mediums of film and storytelling, this afternoon, we will share with you the work of 5 fellow-led initiatives that have been strengthening and rebuilding Chicago this past year, specifically in the areas of education, pandemic recovery, public safety, housing, and mental health. These leaders have embraced courage and innovation together to rethink solutions around the urgent issues this past year has served up to us. Today, you will hear stories of innovation for short-term, immediate responses that have and will continue to be long-term approaches to leadership and problem solving. You will also hear themes of trust, agility, and collective responsibility, and how these tenets of civic leadership will accelerate solutions to our most vexing social issues. When you view the film, you will notice everyone is sitting on red chairs. That's because these issues are urgent, and these fellows responded with urgency to critical needs and acted with purpose. Those red chairs are the signature for New Innovators. We are going to take you through some compelling content this afternoon, and we know you're going to want to talk about it. The video clips will play back to back as one seamless film. After the screening, you will have an opportunity to select the initiative that interests you the most and engage in a 30 to 45-minute small group discussion via Zoom with the fellows leading those efforts. So you will actually have conversations with the people who have done the work. And this is a unique opportunity, a behind the scenes look, if you will. This is your chance to explore the work in greater detail and learn how you can get involved. So now let's get started. To introduce this year's New Innovators film, please join me in welcoming WBEZ reporter Mariah Woelfel. Mariah covers city government at WBEZ. Before joining the City Hall beat in 2021, Mariah worked as a general assignment reporter and producer at the station, where she covered the creation of and the start to Illinois' multi-million-dollar recreational cannabis industry, as well as the city and state's healthcare systems during the COVID-19 pandemic. It is a pleasure to welcome you, Mariah. Thanks for being with us this morning. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Maria. I am so honored to be here. I want to say a huge thank you to Leadership Greater Chicago for its just meaningful, impactful partnership with WBEZ and for giving me the honor of participating in today's program. Also, just a huge congratulations to all of the fellows who've been listening, thinking, collaborating, innovating, all of the buzzwords about the things that lead to great solutions and innovations, since October. I hope you're all feeling very celebratory and proud of yourselves. I'll talk about my work just a little bit and then introduce the video that we're going to watch. I had the chance to view it beforehand and would love to share some thoughts. We are, 2 years out since the pandemic started in Illinois, as we all know. But if I can talk about March 2020 for just a moment, I'm grateful if you'll indulge me. That was a time when at WBEZ, we started a mini team. I think it was March 17th, first day of the stay-at-home order for us, or, staying home from work. And met every morning at 9:30 to talk about how we were going to game plan that day's coverage, that day's news. And it took calling numerous healthcare workers, hospital CEOs, organizations working on the front lines of combating this new pandemic that no one knew what it was about, to try to figure out how to get information out to listeners and readers about what was happening. So as you can imagine, a lot of my days were filled with pretty devastating conversations with nurses and doctors about their hospitals filling up, about them not having enough ventilators, not having enough beds for their patients, particularly low-income community hospitals that didn't have the capacity to treat patients in the hardest hit areas of the city. I even talked to a COVID-19 patient on the phone from his hospital bed hours before he went onto a ventilator. All to say, very depressing stories. It impacted my mental health as it did so many others, doing these stories day in and day out. But at a certain point, I said to my editor, I've got to do some solution positive oriented stories. I have to, we have to be telling those stories as well. And obviously editors at WBEZ agreed, our team agreed. There were these beautiful stories of anything from a teenager starting a hotline to help people sign up for the vaccine, to Spanish-speaking residents going out into communities to try to sign up elderly residents who couldn't navigate ZocDoc, to independent pharmacies spending literally their life savings on trying to get a cold storage freezer to store the Moderna vaccine when you needed that. And so there were all of these beautiful stories that really highlighted the fact that to address an urgent issue, it takes this ecosystem of people, from government leaders with power to enact legislation to organizations and advocates with the wherewithal to lobby legislators or to, fill the gaps where government services aren't available for community members, to residents and community members themselves who know what their communities need and can come up with creative solutions literally on the block to help their neighbors. And I just think that was such a huge part of the pandemic. And I share all that because, as I said, I had the chance to view this video, and that was just my main takeaway, was you really hear from this entire spectrum of people who are making up this powerful ecosystem, addressing these issues that are most pressing to Chicago. We'll hear about public safety, mental health, education, pandemic recovery, affordable housing. And if you look at those issues, I mean, they're huge and they're pressing in the city of Chicago. And it really stuck with me, the ways in which you hear from from all different levels of people in these videos with just inspiring and innovative solutions. So like Maria said, you'll hear themes of collaboration, collective responsibility, resilience, and there's a lot of joy in these videos. And in the you know, what we call in the journalism industry B-roll footage that you'll see as people are talking about solutions. That was one of my favorite parts, just the smiles and inspiring hard work of community members. So without further ado, I will stop talking and we will get to the video. So let's take a look.
If you are documented or undocumented, if you are a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior, your college tuition, your room and board, your books and fees will be paid for. You are going to college for free.
So in a short period of time, Hope Chicago has been, I think, very successful. And that culminated in the launch of the program with our 5 partner schools, which happened back in February. And, you know, some people said it was an Oprah moment. You get a scholarship, you get a scholarship, which I felt pretty good about. That announcement was spectacular. It allowed us to make a promise to 4,000 students.
Wow.
So we raised the money for that. That money is out
That
the
is
door
an
now.
Oprah moment.
It is an Oprah moment. But we have to do that for tens and thousands of more students across the city.
When I first learned that this was going to be the next chapter of your journey in the field of education that you love so much and have made such a significant contribution, I knew that this was a moment of partnership. One, because we're fellow LGC members.
Our goal, if we're successful, is to raise and deploy $1 billion over the next 10 years. And we were very intentional about that goal. It isn't a number that we just pulled out of thin air. We actually did an analysis of what it would cost for Chicago public school students to go to school debt-free over the next 10 years. And the total was $940 million. So the goal here is to really shine a light on college affordability, to really make sure people understand that this misconception that poor students go to college for free just isn't the case.
Not only are we paying for the full college cost of tuition for 9th through 12th graders here, but we are also offering one parent or guardian to go back to school in your family, so your parents are going back too.
Hope Chicago is a bold, transformative initiative, a way of thinking about economic investment in our communities by providing opportunities and pathways for education for those that have may not have that chance. And not only the students from CPS, but their families. And when you shared that part of the vision, it was something that really resonated with me.
Mom, wait, that's not it. Mom. And not only can I go, but you can go too. Like you always wanted to.
I can go back to school.
Yes, you can go back to school.
And they paying for it for me.
Yes.
Wow. Who can I call to say thank you?
When you talk to high school age kids, when they hear scholarships, if I don't have a 4.0 GPA or 3.5 GPA, I just turn it off because you're not talking to me.
Right.
You're not talking to me if I'm an undocumented student. You're not talking to me if I have a 2.5 GPA. And I think that's where we've been getting the best response from students who feel like they've been locked out of the system or sorted out for some reason or another. And when we said, no, we're going to meet you where you are, if that is a 4-year opportunity at U of I or a trade program or a junior college, we're going to meet you there and we're going to provide you with resources. And what I say to people is like, it's great to have a handful of kids go off and do great things. I had those students, you know, during my time as principal, we would all clap and cheer and celebrate them. But I would rather have 20,000 kids get an associate's degree in Inglewood. That's going to change that community. And so opportunities like this, I think, really can be disruptive to a lot of these negative cycles that we've been talking about. And the reality is you can raise a family off of a salary, you know, if you're a professional welder or whether it's, you know, another credential program, you can really do well. And so I think as educators, we have to spend more time talking about that. And Hope offers that opportunity and that track for students as well as their families.
I would challenge our LGC fellow members not only to support with their funding, with their time, time and their treasure, but also in helping to create jobs, because it is so important that we give these students experience
And exposure.
the opportunity. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for lifting that up. We definitely welcome those internships. We're going to have about close to 900 students in our first cohort, and they're going to be looking for internship opportunities as early as this summer, but most certainly they're going to need them for next summer. So people should sign up for that. But I also want people to know that there's a third component here, which is the advocacy piece. We have to disrupt the higher education system in this country, and we want to make sure that more students have access. We have to drive down the cost of college. We have to call on government for more support, both at the federal and the state level. Philanthropy won't get us there long term. It's not going to get us there in every nook and cranny in this country. And so we want to use our platform. We want to use the leverage that we'll have as one of the biggest donors to a lot of our institutions to really start having conversations about what does it mean to have an equitable higher education system for all students. And so in addition to all the other great things that we're going to do at Hope Chicago, that's the one that gets me most excited, because we can change things for this generation, but for generations to come.
When you think about affordable housing, the fact that we have a history in this country that basically attached a racial lens to affordable housing, and that's forced us to be where we are today in trying to unravel what was put in place in our federal systems and other systems in our country.
We have a 120,000 unit affordable housing gap between what we have and what we need, right? And as you're saying, as a country, there's no city in this country that has the resources they need to affordably house people, because as a country, we don't treat housing you can afford as an entitlement, as something that you just get if you need it. And so we are operating absolutely in the conditions of scarcity every day, and yet we're trying to eke out the improvements we can in that context.
And we actually have an opportunity as a community, as a society, as a country, to say, no, we want to actually operate in the opposite way. We want to operate in abundance. And when we start thinking about that, it allows us to be creative, to come up with new and different ways of doing things, because we have the ability and we can be intentional about what we want to achieve, which is equity and accessibility and availability of affordable housing as a right that people have in this country.
What's interesting for me is, as someone who's worked a lot on the segregation that Chicago has, is that I also find it really important to distinguish some real nuances in this conversation, right? Because to point out and to enumerate the negatives of Chicago's profound racial and economic segregation is not the same thing as saying that there's something wrong with majority black spaces or majority brown spaces, even majority white spaces, but that instead what we know is that segregation makes it easier and much more efficient to discriminate against black people and against brown people. And it's that we are trying to solve for, right? I see the issue as twofold. One, we, government and private sector, must invest more equitably so that people can stay where they are and move up the economic ladder right where they are. And two is fundamentally about what Monica Bell calls residential freedom. Do people have choices, right? I believe that if you need a subsidy to live affordably, you should have just as many options about where you live as someone who doesn't.
We're not your grandfather's, your grandmother's public housing authority anymore. On the one hand, often folks think of the old public housing high-rises. And then on the other hand, there are those that are familiar with our Section 8 voucher program. But now we're able to put that use it as an investment tool. And that's where I think our collaboration becomes really important, because we can combine that with the city's resources or with state resources to build more affordable housing. We invest with that, what we call project-based voucher. We're making a 30 or 40-year commitment to affordability.
So Tracy, you were there in December when we announced our largest investment yet in affordable housing, over $1 billion in 24 different developments. And our approach was to say, we've got lots of different communities in this city, lots of market types. We need to be deliberate about hitting all of them. We expect to see investments in long disinvested communities. We also want to be present and proactive in areas that are displacing people currently, right? That might have been affordable in the past, but are rapidly losing that, and we want to put in some real touchstones to keep some affordability. And then we also want to be present in our highest income parts of the city, again, so that people have choices, people can stay who may be finding that no longer affordable. I think the thing that probably a lot of people don't understand about the way our funding tools work is that the biggest resource that we have to do affordable rental housing really is not set up to reach the incomes that most low-income folks in Chicago earn. It's too high, frankly.
And so when you're talking about a family of four affording to either be in a neighborhood or stay in a neighborhood, because so much of what's called naturally occurring affordable housing is disappearing in neighborhoods like Logan Square, then we can come in and give that long-term commitment. We are being much more intentional now. Those of us in this industry, but also as a country, that we're thinking about, the pandemic sort of highlighted that housing is so fundamental. We are actually at this pivot point in the country that we are moving forward in a way that says that housing for all is the way that we want to think about this.
So I remember it was early March, right, and we were sending emails about what's going on. And since you were at the CDC, I was like, whatever Helene thinks is probably the right thing. So I was checking in with her, and we were beginning to see what happened. It was happening in Seattle. They had recently launched a fund between the Community Foundation there and the United Way. And we said, should we be doing something here? And that Monday or Tuesday, we had already raised $8 million, which was crazy.
And I think you were about to send me an email right around the time I was about to call you, and we both had this idea that putting our two organizations together at this critical moment could really produce more than what either of us could do by ourselves. And we were able to get other partners together, launch the fund, raise $8 million, and within a week, really getting money out to those who needed it the most.
We were doing this for months before federal dollars. So by the time the federal dollars came in, our partners knew how to do it. Right. And they were like, great, we can now scale this even more.
The way our teams came together and put egos aside, nobody was interested in getting organizational credit. We just wanted to do the right thing. We wanted to make sure that people weren't hurting and suffering, and to the extent of our ability, make sure that we were meeting the needs of communities. I think this pandemic really highlighted more than many people were even aware of, really how divided we are, how the systemic barriers that have led to the wealth gap, and how, while was clearly important for us to focus on the relief, it's so important for us to think about long-term, how do we close this racial and ethnic wealth gap?
The pandemic didn't cause the inequities that exist in our community, and what we've said often is it made visible what had been invisible to many. And now that we've all seen it, what are we going to do about it? Through We Rise, through the work that we're all doing together, there's an opportunity to continue working on these issues that are now much more transparent than they've ever been. They've been there. Like, we all know that they've been there, but we've all seen it now.
We Rise Together, a coalition of public, private, and philanthropic funders, awarded $7.4 million worth of grants today, and the focus is to revive projects that were already in the works when the pandemic hit.
We had Chicago Connected expanding digital access because we heard from families that while food and shelter were challenging, they were getting ways to work through that, but they couldn't make remote learning work. They didn't have access to the internet. And so Chicago Connected became a signature opportunity for our whole city to be the largest digital expansion in the country. We've also put resources behind building out 211. a way to create a first call for help in our community to navigate what today is 180 different call centers or call lines to say, hey, I need this, I need this. We're now hopefully months away from 211 being a reality in our community.
I mean, the city is now moving to have a guaranteed income pilot, and I think a lot of that builds on the work of the cash that people were able to get during the pandemic, and realizing that giving people cash, they will use it in the right way. It can make a big difference in their lives. We now will have the largest guaranteed income pilot in the country.
It's been interesting to see the evolution of collective thinking around issues that are not new, but the approaches that we maybe had never taken before the moment caused us to do something different, and all of a sudden we've come up with better solutions.
The narratives were different, and I think this moment, this urgency made people have to think differently about things. I think that the fact that people are aware of the challenges, are aware of the disparities that we face in health and economics and in so many other ways, and that people recognize that they could make a difference. So I think there's this sense of renewed commitment to making a difference. You know, we work very closely with the city, with the county, with business, with other philanthropic partners, with the nonprofit sector. So, you know, I think these efforts where we bring everybody to the table who have different perspectives, different skill sets, you know, and can really complement. That's when, you know, the sum of the part, the whole is really greater than the sum of the parts. And I think we proved that with how we did the relief effort.
We now have really a whole new set of tools that we can apply to these issues, whether they be different ways to look at issues, different ways to partner. If we can learn from that and come out in a different place, there's opportunity to make real change.
We both use the word love all the time. You even write it. You just don't say it. I read your newsletters. And I think it makes the work, which is so hard, so much easier. So this is my friend Grace. I mean, secretary. Oh, sorry.
No. Oftentimes, we are there for community members on perhaps the worst days of their lives. And oftentimes they don't even know it's us, right? Because it's you.
That's right. The people that we serve at Thresholds, as you mentioned, are the most vulnerable, right? These are people who have been incarcerated, who have lived way too long on the street and have been in and out of institutional settings. And what we try to do with our partners is create an opportunity for recovery for them, right? To live in the least restrictive setting possible, basically in their own home and in their community. But in order to do that, you need a workforce. You need a really talented, trained, committed workforce. And right now, as you know, we are, like all of our partners, we are really struggling.
Within the context of increasing need, as well as perhaps an acknowledgement of that increasing need simultaneously, and COVID-19 and the workforce shortages, we are, I believe, at a point of great emergency.
So it's also really on us. You know, we're going to rebuild the workforce, but as leaders, we also have to think very differently. We have to think like way into the 21st century about how we're going to approach this work.
In terms of innovating as well as diversifying the behavioral health workforce, and then also ensuring that the behavioral health workforce reflects the constituency of people in Illinois, we launched this new program where we are actually supporting people with lived expertise to become certified recovery specialists so that they can then have this professional certification and then work at organizations like Thresholds and other community mental health centers across the state.
We had a great success this year. We built this broad and deep and wide coalition in the state of Illinois. It's a mouthful, but it's called the Rebuild Illinois Behavioral Health Workforce. But we gathered providers from every part of the state, from Rockford to Effingham and Carbondale and everything in between. We crafted a piece of legislation that resulted in almost $170 million in new funding for Medicaid mental health. So this is a game changer. I say it's more than a game changer. This is a lifesaver. We're going to be able to invest in our staff, the people on the front lines doing God's work, and be able to open our doors again.
Oftentimes, people will ask me, well, what can you keep? What can government keep? What can DHS keep in terms of the lessons that you learned during COVID-19 and into the future? And my response is, what do you want me to keep? There was a very strong public will and expectation on our shoulders in government to do all of it, right? To make sure that people were housed and socially distanced and had PPE. You know, we were running, sprinting, because not only did we want to do it of our own accord, but we had the wind of the public will behind our back. Is that public will still going to be there to make sure that people who experience homelessness have a place to sleep, have a place to call home? Will the public will be there? Because if the public will is there, we can capture all the lessons learned from COVID-19.
Can we talk about hope? I am so filled with hope, I have to say. But I just want to say one thing about hope. So hope is awesome, but it's not enough. Hope, for me, is the work that we have to do. The work with love and power to turn like hope into housing, and to turn hope into healthcare, and to turn hope into like, hallelujah, we got it done, right? Because at the end of the day, it's about getting the work done for those that we serve and love, and we have to show them. So we have to hope, and we have to wish, we have to work really, really hard.
Majority of the youth that we service are high-risk, gang-affiliated youth. They are a group of individuals who are often judged based on their affiliation, and oftentimes are cast to the side. In reality, those are the people that we need to be paying attention to the most.
.60623, the zip code that Phil and I are in, was the hardest hit by COVID in the pandemic. We had violence spike like crazy. We had post-George Floyd's murder, the challenges we faced between black and brown. And I think 2 years later, we're still facing some of those challenges, but there's beauty in the brokenness. And so I think really a theme we've been working on this year is healing together. And so it's been beautiful to see kind of the relationship between agencies in North Lawndale, in Little Village, been seeing the unity across churches, seeing the unity across nonprofits, seeing the street outreach efforts. And so we've come a long way. We've seen things improve, but we still have a ways to go.
Yeah. I mean, the reality of healing together is purposeful, like not waiting for another riot, not waiting for another pandemic. And so purposefully changing the story means I got to get out, I got to connect, I got to do some things so there's a deeper proactive movement.
We're seeing, man, such amazing stories of young people who led through the pandemic, feeding over 2.6 million people. We have 15, 18 to 24-year-olds who are leading this pantry that's going to open across the street and will become a food distribution hub for the West Side. We see young people, man, succeeding, graduating. See our street outreach team really walking, and they've been through so much.
The level of trust that's there amongst the peacekeepers, our street ambassadors that are out there that are had their license to operate, to engage. We had 46 violent interruptions last year, 46. That happened because they've been building along the way. Peace is not something that's fluffy. It is hard. You know, like love is a verb, peace, I believe, is a verb. It demands action, right? And it demands you carrying the weight of what, of others.
So that's the initial goal with the outreach team at the firehouse, to mediate conflicts, build community, stay hyper-local, offer resources, and just be an advocate for peace. You know what I mean? We're peacemakers.
We respond to pretty much every, critical incident in the neighborhood. So if somebody's shot, the outreach team is, trying to get to the scene, trying to connect with the family, trying to de-escalate the situation.
There's a lot of trauma that our participants are going through, and they need somebody, who can guide them towards healing. I try to be that person. I try to be that mentor.
I try to let them know the basis of what we got to offer them for things they need in life to become a better person and be a productive citizen.
So we like to check in on them, see how they're doing, if there's anything we can do. provide them with rights to courts. If they need to get an ID, we give them rights for that. So basically, we want to do life with them. Whatever they need in that time is what we do.
So if you ask them to put the gun down, you got to replace that gun in a sense with a book, an application. So you just can't ask them to do one without the other. You got to replace it.
There's a lot of beautiful people here with a lot of potential, a lot of young people here with a lot of energy that, you know, through guidance can be put into doing good things. And the more we continue to, you know, walk with our youth, pray with our youth, love on our youth, the more they're willing to open up about or listen to what you have to offer.
So over the past 2 years, we had all kinds of people step up. So started from within. So young people, neighbors coming together and saying, hey, how do we better the community? Then we had partners from around the city come and give funding, give resources, give volunteer time, and in huge ways. And so now, as we continue through into this next season, it's going to take all of us. So I've seen more coordination and collaboration in the last 2 years than I've probably seen in the last 20. And so I think, how do we continue with that? How do we make sure we build on this momentum? How do we make sure we draw on the relationships of LGC? How do we make sure we draw on the relationships of leaders in our own community? And not really take away that power, because it needs to be led. We believe that the answers to the community's challenges need to be led from within. Right. And so how do you have these wraparounds really come together to support the good work that's already happening and continue to build this healing together?
I'm with you on that. The young people can lead the way, giving the right tools and let them create what it is you can't see.
If we can take the power, the energy, the relationships of LGC and wrap around our young people,
right,
man, we're gonna build for the future decades ahead of time.
Exactly. Taking a chance at that reality. I mean, being able to trust in it as well.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Just so inspiring to watch. So many beautiful moments in those videos. My personal favorite is hearing kids just screeching at the idea of going to college for free, and the mother who immediately asks who she can call to thank. It's just a lot of beautiful moments from all of these fellows working to better the city. I think one of the moments that stuck with me was when Dr. Janice Jackson is talking about how it's beautiful to have, you know, an Oprah moment like that where you get a scholarship and you get a scholarship. But she talks about, you know, the larger work ahead, that philanthropy can't carry us through, that's one step of the larger, you know, advocacy ecosystem and to enact change for generations to come. So I really do appreciate how you can see these very direct solutions that people are working on as kind of, you know, band-aids to stop the bleeding on some of these issues, but keeping a larger eye on more systemic changes needed for generations to come. I also really love this common theme of hope that you hear throughout the videos. You know, I feel hope for me is the foundation of like any project I start, any idea I have. Like, you have to have hope that it can work. And I think Pastor Phil Jackson says it really well at the end there, where he says, you know, it's about being able to trust in and believe in the reality that you're working towards, that you believe that it can be possible. And I think that's another very powerful message we heard throughout, because that's what has to, you know, keep you going when things get hard. And so I think hope is a really important foundation. And I was like really happy to hear about it throughout all of those videos. One person at the end asks, you know, how do we continue with these collaborations, with these coordinations that you have developed during the pandemic, that we learned to work together during the pandemic to address this urgent issue? And I think Leadership Greater Chicago is so inspiring, because I think the way to do that, to continue those collaborations, one of them is by viewing these other issues as urgently as we viewed the pandemic, and to continue to innovate as if we have a global pandemic affecting our society, but thinking about mental health resources, public safety, education in that way as well. And I think that that's why this model, this group of collaborators, this fellowship is so inspiring, because it really does seem that is what you all are doing here. And so with that, I will turn it back to Maria, who's going to talk about the breakout sessions. Thank you again so much for having me, and for all the work you all are doing to better the city that we all care so much about.
Well, thank you, Mariah, and thank you to each of our new innovators for your leadership and cross-sector collaborations that are having a significant impact on our region's emergence. And, to follow up on Mariah's point, Leadership Chicago is honored to call you all fellows, and there is such an opportunity for cross-fellow collaboration, as you've seen here. And all you have to do is reach out and get into the directory and begin surfing for people who have, similar ideas or things that you want to, or people that you want to identify. It's a free resource to all of you. Take advantage of it. Connect and make the partnerships. Pile on to efforts that are already out there. We don't have to recreate the wheel. There's a lot of great work being done across all of the fellows, and all you have to do is stay up and in touch with Fellows on the Move, which is published every single week, and just reach out and identify yourself as an LGC fellow, and I'm sure you will get a response, because that is our pact. That is our bond. So before we move to breakouts, I want to extend a thank you to everyone who has shared their stories, their experiences, and learnings with us throughout the year. Additionally, I want to offer my gratitude to you, our fellows, our partners, and our friends. You make up an entire network of unsung heroes who, in your own way, make a difference across our city. For that, we thank you. You're changing the world, one person at a time, one block at a time, 1 mile at a time, the city. You're taking on so much, and thank you for all that you do to make Chicago that city with potential for all, and a region where we can all stand up and be proud of it. If you enjoyed today's program and have found this series to be insightful in your own civic engagement and journey, please consider supporting Leadership Greater Chicago with a gift at lgcchicago.org/donate, so we can continue our work to develop Chicago civic leaders. You can find the link to donate in the chat. Every single one of your donations, no matter how small, will make a difference. You will be changing the world with us. With that, I would like to direct your attention to the bottom of your Zoom screen for the breakout room button. I invite you to select the initiative from today's film that interests you the most. Remember, the people who have done this work are the people you're going to be talking to. Once you make your selection, you will be sent to a breakout room where you will have a chance to meet with the fellows featured in the film. As always, this portion of the session will not be recorded, and we encourage honest, respectful, and authentic interactions. Now, due to some scheduling conflicts, we are unable to host a breakout conversation on housing equity, but all others are on board. So thank you again for your participation this year. Please continue the conversation about the work we've witnessed today and all the initiatives you've learned about this year with your networks. And I know there was a lot that was covered here today. And if you want to see it again, guess what? We're going to send you the link to the video. And as a follow-up, you'll be able to see this in its entirety, or sections that especially hit you, and be able to enjoy them one more time. So have a wonderful summer, and we will see you in the fall. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to WBEZ. Mariah, thanks for a great job. And please say hello to all of your colleagues. They have been a special part of this entire series. Thank you all. Bye-bye.